Welcome to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Russell Jackman. Let's see here. At each commercial break, we're going to ask a sports trivia question. Today it's going to be kind of interesting. We have the theme is baseball numbers. So I'll throw out some famous numbers, and we'll see if you know the answer to that. All right. When we come back, there's a lot to talk about with the NBA playoffs. I want to also mention about Lionel Messi being offered $400 million by Saudi Arabia. Let's see here. Also, Lamar Jackson signing a huge contract. 5 NFL players suspended for gambling. Holy smokes. And then are we going to see the first woman in NFL? I think she's a kicker. There's sort of been talking about that. She's played in the NCAA. And apparently she's pretty good, but I'm a little concerned that I don't know how strong she is. Now usually kickers don't really kind of get hit, but boy, if she gets hit, I don't know what's going to happen with that. So those are the various topics, and I got a couple of sort of interesting stories if we have time from the old days. I'm talking the really old days. And Russell, I'm sure you've got a lot to talk about. Hey, any wrestling news?
Yes, I do, but yeah, let's the number one thing I want to talk about is the passing of Vita Blue.
Yeah, that's so sad. He's such a nice guy. We used to get to play golf together each year at the Joe Morgan Memorial Golf Tournament. Yeah, that's just a real hit hard, especially for us here in the Bay Area. And with that, we're going to say, stay tuned. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. This segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, still providing mortgage investments yielding 7, 8, or 9%. Pick your choice, depending upon how much you invest. All right, stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown along with Russell Jackman. So let's start off with the sad news of Vita Blue passing.
To be honest with you, we could talk the entire hour about Vita Blue.
Well, I mean, we spent a good amount of time.
I know we have other stuff to talk about, but they're really, I've interviewed a lot of people. I've had a chance in my lifetime to interview some amazing people, but I don't think there's ever been a nicer guy that I've ever interviewed than Vita Blue.
Well, if you remember, every year at the golf tournament, we would go ahead and he was, since he was a staple here in the Bay Area, he would always come to the Joe Morgan celebrity golf tournament, the Memorial Golf. And in fact, it used to be Joe Morgan was around. It was the Dave Casper tournament, and then it changed to the Joe Morgan Memorial one. And now, with Vita Blue passing, it's so sad. I mean, he was so fun to watch, and he's one of the nicest guys. And like you said, he was just awesome. To interview him, and it's funny because when Joe Morgan was alive, we still have this on one of our shows that we interviewed the two of them together to talk about the 1972, I think it was, World Series. And it was kind of fun because they were kind of bantering back and forth, and it was sort of like two old codgers kind of arguing, well, which team was really the best, and it was just, I don't know, it was just a lot. It was a lot of fun, but it was just so sad to hear. And apparently he died of cancer. He's only 73.
Yeah, and he, that's my thought, is that he had a million stories, and he told a million stories on the air, and you know what? I bet you he died with a million stories that he never got to tell.
Yeah.
I got the impression that he was never done telling people about the stories and his experiences in baseball. He was always so open to us, and always happy to, like, when we did, we interviewed him twice, in back-to-back years, at least for me. He never big timed us. He never said, I've got something else I've got to do. And this is from everybody's experience. I never heard one single person say one negative thing about interaction with Vita Blue. He
Yeah.
just he charmed everybody. He always had a smile for
Mhm.
everybody. He always made people laugh. He could weave stories and like he was a master tapestry worker. He just always had a way of telling things in a way that would be enthralling you. You
Yeah.
would just sit there and listen and just be so amazed that here you are listening to a really a cornerstone
Mhm.
of baseball history. I mean, I don't think you can talk about baseball history without including Vita Blue. I mean, what man had a significant impact on both the A's and the Giants?
Yeah.
The
Joe
Giants and
Joe
the
Morgan
A's.
did.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's about it. When you
Yeah.
really look at the list
Yeah.
and maybe Scudero, but when you look
Oh
at
yeah.
and Hudson, you know,
Yeah.
Tim
And
Hudson, but
Zito. Very
and
Zito
Zito, I
too.
guess
Yeah.
but it's really a very, very short list
Yeah.
of guys that had big impacts on both the Giants and the A's at the same time. And he was such, when I think of the 70s, that early
Yeah.
70s period, and
Mhm.
growing up and loving baseball, Vita Blue was a big part of that.
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
He was one of those guys. It's like you always waited for him to be the pitcher of that day. In fact, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think he was the first player to have like his name Vita. In other words, like have just like one name on his jersey that was not his last name. You know what I mean?
yes,
I
yes,
would not be surprised if he was the first.
and that I mean, there's so few people in sports where you just say a guy's first name and you know exactly
Yeah.
who that is. You know that Vita, the name Vita. As soon as you hear that,
Yeah.
it brings you back in time
Yeah.
to that 72, 73 period where he was an amazing player. And the sad part obviously was that the cocaine bust that
Oh
happened to
yeah.
him, and he really turned that around, and instead of letting that embroil him
Yeah.
and bring
Or
him
fun.
down
Yeah.
and cause a separation between him and the fans, he never let that come between him and the fans. And fans meant a lot to him.
Yeah.
The way that people cared about him, he always wanted to give that back to the
Mhm.
fans. And it just, I know it sounds corny, but they really don't make people like Vita Blue anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they ever made him before Vita Blue. I mean, Vita Blue was one of a kind, and I really want to get back to the fact that I've interviewed some guys. I mean, no offense to Rick Barry, but like Rick Barry, although a nice guy, had other things that he needed to do. He wanted to golf. He wanted
Yeah.
to catch up with other people. He had an agenda,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I see. Yeah. Yeah.
he had other things that he had to take care of. Vita would sit there and wait and hang out with us, and we
Yeah.
almost had to tell him, "Hey, Vita, we have to interview other people because you know you're going to be here for like an hour, and we love you, but we got to talk to some other folks here." It was hard, and when he would come onto the course, that's the other thing I just wanted to say.
Yeah.
Every single person wanted to talk to him, and
Yeah.
he was just there to shake a hand and make a friend. I don't think he was ever done making friends. I think that probably right up until the day he died, he probably was still making new friends. And it's a wonderful thing to think you go through life being that way, and that you can have, not everybody goes through sports and is so, has such a positive thing to say about everybody. There's
Yeah.
people like Ryan Leaf and people like
Yeah.
Lawrence Phillips and OJ Simpson and some guys that you wouldn't want them, you wouldn't, if you talk to them for half an hour, you go check your pocket to make sure your wallet was still there, but Vita Blue was just genuinely, every bit of him was a good guy. And the
He was a
world,
he's a major factor too from a sports standpoint of the 70, 3 World Series in a row. I mean, that's going to be really difficult for another team to do that.
I think he's the only guy ever to make the cover of Sports Illustrated as both a Giant and as an A.
Probably, I would not be surprised at all. Yeah,
And they don't make them like that anymore, and they probably never will. And we lost somebody that is an icon
yeah,
of the Bay Area. And I'm not sure we'll ever find someone like that again.
gotcha. Hey, Russell, we're going to cut to our first break. It was great talking about Vita. We're going to definitely miss him. Here's our first trivia question. We're talking baseball numbers. The number 511 is a famous number in baseball. Give me 2 reasons. You might know one, but you may not know the other. 511 is a famous number in baseball. And when I say famous, I mean it's just like if you think about the number, you go, oh yeah, okay, that happened. All right. Email Edward at Sports Econ 101 the answer to this question. 511 is a famous number in baseball. Give me 2 reasons. 2 separate 511 numbers. All right. Here we go. And stay with us. Sports Econ 101. I'll be right back. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Edward Brown here along with Russell Jackman. Our first trivia question, 511 is a famous number in baseball. See if you can give me 2 reasons why.
I'm just thinking like that's the number of home runs Mel Ott hit.
Yes, actually, that's the harder of the two answers. Very good.
Wow. Okay. That's, let's see, 511 also. All I can think of, and this doesn't do any good, is the number that you call if you want to get traffic conditions.
not so much a baseball one, but I get you. No, actually, to me, this would be, if anybody had to say a record that probably will never be broken in sports. And I mentioned this before.
Ricky Henderson steals?
Yeah, no, no, I think he had like 1,000 or something.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
Cy Young, the number of wins Cy Young had.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Right?
God, 511. Yeah, no, that is something that will never be broken.
I mean, now if somebody wins 20 games, it's like unheard of, right?
Oh God, yes.
I mean, you have to go back
no
to
one even gets a complete game. I mean,
exactly.
When you get a complete game, that's headline news.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you imagine it, like, if somebody said, okay, I'll be a 20-game winner, and then do it for over 25 years in a row. I mean, you're talking about, you're in your 40s or 50s when you're pitching. It's probably going to be kind of tough. All right.
Yeah, no, as I had said before, I think Cal Ripken's consecutive game streak is never going to.
I mean, that'll be tough, but I don't see that being, personally, I don't see that being insurmountable.
Oh, I do, because the game has changed. The guys, load management and guys getting games off is, nobody plays 162 games. It's not a badge of honor anymore.
Okay, so the way the streak works is every single time there's a game, you have to be a starter.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And
yeah,
3,002. That's like 20 years straight, right?
Exactly. There's just not. First of all, if it were to happen, we'd be in our 70s or 80s. So that'll be one thing. And second of all, just the game has changed. The guys just don't play 162 games. It's just not. You just don't see that. I think the current leader has like maybe 800 games played. And then he's got to play like another, 2,200 games in a row. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. But you're right. you're right. Cy Young is part. He used to pitch double headers
Yeah.
by himself. Complete game double headers, and I mean that's completely unthinkable. No manager would let a guy pitch.
True. And there weren't that many pitchers per team, so the guy had
Right.
to pitch a lot more often. But
Wow.
also, I think is it Pete Rose that got the closest to the 56 game hitting streak when he hit 44?
That I could see
I
being
could see
done.
being broken.
That one I could see being done, but I think Cal Ripken and Cy Young's numbers are
Yeah.
pretty safe for our lifetime, and probably for a couple more lifetimes on top of that,
Probably. Yeah, well, like you said, the game's changed, so it's hard for anybody to beat it because the game's changed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure anyone's ever going to beat AC Green's consecutive game streak in the NBA, which was like 800 games or something like that.
Same thing. Yeah, every time that there's a game, you have to be the starter.
No, I think you have to play 82 games a season, is how that works.
Oh,
And
okay.
and
Oh,
like
so just playing the game, and so that's 10 years in a row without
yes,
getting hurt or a day off.
or a day off with
Yeah.
load management. That's just a completely different animal now. That it's just no one plays 80. I mean, you had Kevin Looney play 82 games last 2 years, and that in itself was a huge anomaly that you
Yeah.
didn't see from any other player in the league, pretty much.
Yeah, and AC Green, he was a good guy.
Yeah, well, that
very
he was a pretty conservative religiously, but
Yeah.
an Iron Man on the court. So
Yeah.
speaking of Iron Men on the court, unfortunately the Warriors looked like aluminum foil men
Yeah.
last night
Yeah,
against
that
the
was
Lakers.
oh man, the silly turnovers, just and the bumbling fumbling, but I mean even the Lakers had some of the same issues, but wow, who is it who Williams kind of came out of nowhere and
They had Lonnie Williams the fourth,
yeah,
who had been kind of a cast off from San Antonio,
yeah,
and
exactly.
really pretty anonymous. And meanwhile, Jordan Poole for the Warriors
Oh my
went 0
God.
for 4, and I think that the Warriors are going to be, if they do not somehow come back and win this series, and I'm still not counting them as being completely over, because they have come back from 3-1, a deficit of 3-1 before, and once gave up a 3-1 lead in a
Yeah,
series
please.
before.
Scott Cavaliers, yeah.
It can happen.
What about
It can happen.
guys like Kaminga that haven't even played? It seems.
No, and I'm a little dismayed with that. I'm surprised that Kerr has stuck with some guys that have struggled a lot. Clay has not been himself, and it's going to take. I really think that Curry is going to have to be the focal point, and maybe have another 50-point game in order for the Warriors to win. They'll definitely. They're really going to play desperately to win on Tuesday, when Wednesday, when they play back in Golden State. And when you say it's a 3-game series and you got 2 out of 3 games in Golden State, you look at it in those terms, you go, well, they could still pull it off, but they really it's very frustrating to see LeBron James doing what he's doing.
Yeah, he really came out.
Yeah, he's still looking like he's got a lot of gas in the tank, and Anthony Davis is a very hard matchup for the Warriors right now. And
it was what he wants.
It was terrible timing for Looney to get sick when he did. That is kind of an X factor, is that Looney was looking like one of the, and he, just like I was thinking about Iron Man, even when sick, he still managed to play minutes, for the Warriors, but he just wasn't effective and wasn't the same player because of what's been going on. But he still won't sit down or miss a game because that to him is so important.
Yeah.
And
Well, as
I
long as
kind
he can
of,
contribute to the team, that's the important thing.
yeah.
If the Lakers do move on, uh, Djokovic versus Anthony Davis will be a good matchup.
Well, we're potentially not that far away from seeing a number 7 ranked team versus a number 8th ranked team in the NBA Finals. It could be the Lakers against Miami. And if so, you'll have the 2 lowest seeds in history facing each other for an NBA championship.
Well, I always kind of knew Jimmy Butler was a superstar. It just seemed like he was a little too sporadic with his um, exciting games or whatever, breakouts or whatever. But
Yeah,
he
but he's
seems
breaking out all over New York right now.
yeah,
I could see Miami going, and it's to think that they had to, play in to get into the playoffs and win the playing games, and so did the Lakers.
yeah.
You know, it's an amazing road if they wind up facing each other in the finals.
So I was at the airport and I just happened to catch the last minute of the Boston game, and it was weird to see uh, Tatum, not get called, excuse me, for the push off, but then Harden ends up, getting the three, and then Boston, Marcus Smart just a hair of a second too late. I mean, that was a really exciting game, but you look at that and you say, how does a ref miss that kind of push off when they're
There've
able to
been
call
some
something in?
terrible, there've been some terrible refereeing in this postseason, and I do hope that Silver, you know, reviews all of these games and maybe make some changes and maybe even fires some of these refs because there've been some really horrendous calls everywhere you look. And the Warriors, not to give excuses, but the Lakers, up until game 4, there was like the Lakers shot 44 more free throws in the
Yeah.
series than the Warriors did.
Well, there weren't too many missed calls, I think, against the Warriors from the standpoint of the Lakers just didn't seem to really foul that much. I mean, they were really pretty good about their defense, so I didn't really see too many missed calls from that end of it.
Well, I think they overcalled stuff on the Warriors, so
That definitely could have been. Hey,
that's my.
are you ready for our second trivia
Well, I
question?
got part of them, part of the first one right, so
Yeah, but
sure, why not?
okay, this one I think you'll get because this one's a little easier. Okay, in fact, I think the next two are going to be ones that you're going to go. I'm sure glad he asked those questions. All right, 714 is a famous number in baseball. Why is that? You know this one?
I believe so.
I believe so. Okay. Well, we'll let you answer when we come back. Stay with us. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. One more time. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Russell Jackman. Second trivia question. Famous baseball numbers. 714 is a famous baseball number. Why?
Is that Hank Aaron, or is it a home run record?
No, it's actually Babe Ruth.
That's Babe Ruth.
Yeah, it's when Hank Aaron in 1974, April 8th, I think it was, hit number 715 that it was famous. And it's funny, I was just thinking about that when you mentioned Hank Aaron. I mean, it's just so stupid. He was getting death threats. Like,
yes,
you better not break his record. I mean, what's he supposed to do? Not hit, right? But even here's the funny thing is that even Roger Maris was getting death threats about back in 1961 for the beating Babe Ruth's record of 60 home runs in
right.
1927. So it part of it was a black white thing, for Hank Aaron, but part of it was just hey, this guy's an icon, you can't beat his record. It's like
It's
that's
crazy.
the whole idea about records. They're made to be broken.
They were made to be broken. Absolutely. So yeah, you had a couple other sports topics that you
Okay, so Lionel Messi is offered. It's so funny. This reminds me of the Live Golf, but Lionel Messi is offered $400 million per year by Saudi Arabia I guess they really want a World Cup. And how old is Messi now? I mean, he's getting kind of older now, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, we're just seeing Saudi Arabia with our money, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
I always like to point out when people are saying, how Saudi Arabia is coming up with $400 million. You go to the gas pump recently,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Yeah.
now you know where they're getting that money from, is they're using our money for gas, they're raising the price of gas constantly to buy all these athletes and try to sign all these start up their own leagues and stuff like that. I really hope that the athletes and the United States and the rest of the world can stand up to Saudi Arabia and really their ill-gotten gains. I've never trusted Saudi Arabia. I don't like
Sure.
Saudi Arabia being involved in this sort of stuff. And in my
So,
opinion, if they really want this sort of stuff, they should build it themselves instead of just using the money they've gotten to just buy everything in sight.
well, let me ask you something because I know a little bit about economics. What I don't understand from a policy standpoint is why are we were energy independent before. Gas was really low.
No,
Oil
we
was
weren't.
low.
We were not. We have never been energy independent. That is
Well, let's
that
put it
is
this way: we weren't relying on other. Well, let's put it this way: we had enough or have enough in the United States to oil, for oil production. What I don't understand is why does policy say, "Oh no, we can't drill on the United States because we're trying to get in, we're trying to get away from that." But oh, by the way, let's go ahead and buy Venezuela and Saudi Arabia oil. I mean, if we're supposed to protect the planet, don't you protect the whole planet, or do you just try to protect the United States planet? You know what I mean?
I don't know. You ever went to Santa Barbara in the 70s?
Oh yeah, they got all these oil rigs.
And did you ever like go up to the shore and have to, wash your feet off from all the little tar balls that you would get?
That I didn't have to do, but I
I
mean, I hear
remember
what
that as a child. I remember that as a child.
yeah,
You would hang out on the beach, and at the end of the day, you'd have tar all over your feet,
gotcha.
and you'd have
Okay,
to,
okay. So then, and you know what? As long as the administration can be honest and say, look, we don't care about the rest of the world. We just don't want to have our pretty United States be oil.
your
Oh,
previous president Trump was afraid of windmills and said that windmills cause cancer. So
well,
I
actually, what I didn't hear him say that, but I did hear him say about the bird. He says, yeah, they're really dangerous for the birds, and everybody laughed at him. And guess what? There's some birds dying left and right because of the windmills. They
yeah, but
probably
would you rather the birds be killed from the windmills or an entire coastline be destroyed when a tanker runs into the shore, or thousands, tens of thousands of sea creatures get
well,
poisoned?
if you're only giving me those two choices, then you're right. But
And I mean the BP oil spill,
oh, I
there was
remember Exxon
there's
Valdez and all that. Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and that sort of stuff can happen all the time. And there's ways to make those windmills safer for birds, but there's
I
really
would think
nothing to
so.
do.
Yeah,
There's nothing you can do to make the oil, the when a boat captain is going to get drunk and run
exactly.
into.
Okay, but then here's my question: why then do we buy from any country?
We could, if we went to sustainable fuels, get away from we could bankrupt Saudi Arabia. In
And
fact,
that's you're right. You're right. I mean, that's why
nothing would make me happier. Nothing in the entire universe would
well,
make me
also,
happier
also,
than
you wouldn't be funding all this stuff on Russia to go against Ukraine and whoever else, right?
sure.
I
But
mean, if you can get oil down to
when
20 bucks a
when
barrel,
Gavin Newsom when Gavin Newsom says he wants to ban oil burning cars, people go insane. And when Nevada says they don't want to add any more gas stations, people go insane. So we're addicted to gas here
well,
in
how do you make
America.
so how do you if I understand it correctly, and I know this is kind of going beyond sports, but if I understand it correctly, and tell me if I'm wrong, how else do you make the electricity powerful enough for all the electric vehicles? And where do you get all of the cobalt, lithium, and all that other stuff? You have to destroy the planet in order to do the electricity for that versus oil. And then you got the slave labor in the Congo and all these other places. So it's like pick your poison, right? I mean, it's
Well,
unless
I
you
know
can
you
just
don't
find
want to.
seawater to fuel your gas tank,
Yeah, I know you don't want to hear this, but if we had listened to Jimmy Carter back in the 70s and started working towards renewable energy and all of this other stuff and recycling, by the time we got into it now, we would probably have it all mastered. I mean, if
Well,
America
okay,
and
that's a good point. But you know what they do is it's like when you're changing accounting systems, you run parallel systems. You don't just get rid of one, right? So you do it together, and then when you realize one can take over the other, then you can get rid of the.
but it's a matter of focus. It's a matter of focus, and if you say, hey, America, this is what we are going to do, instead of fighting a war in Afghanistan for 30 years that
Yeah.
cost us
Ugh.
trillions of dollars, you put that money into renewable energy, we would be done with it. We would have figured
Yeah.
out a way to, make batteries. There's talk about, having homes that have windows that are actually solar panels.
Oh,
That
that's
that
cool.
Yeah, it's really great stuff, but we do stuff, piecemeal, because we're too addicted to oil and we're too addicted to gas. And then this money goes into Saudi Arabia's pockets.
Yeah.
Then Saudi Arabia has nothing but idle money to spend in Dubai and these other oil-rich nations that sit there and manipulate us to make sure that we don't get away from it. And that
Follow the money, right? Always
it's
follow the money.
Well, we are Sports Econ 101. So,
That's right.
it's, not to get people furious about politics, but if you, politics and sports aren't that far apart, because they know how much people, spend their idle time watching it. And if they can control that, then they can control people's thoughts and minds on other things too.
Sure.
And that's why, we get into the spot that we're in. Also, hey, I also wanted to mention, what do you think about the A's, possibly not moving to Las Vegas now because they missed the deadline on whether to build the state on how they were going to build the stadium and then getting the land, and now Vegas is getting antsy and wants to sell that land to somebody else.
Huh. So it won't just get necessarily pushed off a year. It'll
Yeah,
get.
the land may not be there for them to build
I
that they're
wonder.
intending on using.
Well, could they still buy the land and then just uh, push off the movement an extra year? They can still
No,
buy
the
the land.
the deadline to pay for that land is
Oh,
running
gotcha,
out.
gotcha, gotcha.
And they want to, and
Uh,
the original owners want to sell the land to somebody else. If the A's continue to sort of wander around and gaze up at the sky and then
well,
gaze at their feet.
so what's the delay for the A's? Why haven't they finished the
I
contract?
think they may be the dumbest ownership now that Dan Snyder is out of the NFL. I think that now it's universally claimed that the A's ownership is the most incompetent in professional sports, and they're sure proving it. They're sure
Boy, it's like,
proving it.
how do they, it's so hard to own a sports team because you have to get voted in and all that. How do these guys even get to own it if they're that dumb?
They you get the money together and you buy it, and the A's were so cheap. So, and they've just been operating on such an ineffective budget, but they don't spend money. So they earn it as part of, the collective bargaining agreement for the entire league. But I think if the A's were a standalone business, they'd be out of business.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's I bet when they win, it's like sort of a big celebration because they're just paying. What are they below 200 or something?
Yeah, I mean, and baseball is getting a black eye every time the A's go out there, and they have 5,000 fans in a
Yeah,
crumbling
it's sort of like
stadium.
they have to do with the movie Major League. With the Cleveland Indians, they chose them.
Right. Now they need to do it. Yeah, Moneyball is taking on a very different tone when
Yeah.
you think of the A's right now. In fact, they should probably do a sequel to Moneyball and just like finish
Oh,
off the story about what a disaster they've become. Because you see Moneyball, and at the end of Moneyball, you're thinking, oh well, everything's going to go great for the A's. They're really poised to become one of the great teams in the history of Major League Baseball. And think 20 years later, 30 years later, after Moneyball, what a complete disaster they are. I think they need to do a sequel and for maybe make it by the makers of Idiocracy. The Mike Judge and the makers of Idiocracy. So
hey, moving on just real quickly. 5 NFL players were suspended for gambling. Oops.
and so is the Alabama coach for baseball, the college baseball. Alabama, the coach for Alabama was also nailed for gambling.
Man, these guys have to kind of really seriously think about, you know, I got to really think before I do anything, how's this going to affect? For some reason, this reminds me. So Keanu Reeves, the actor, apparently he's so conscious about like being pictures taken and what could happen. He won't put his arms around people, especially women, because he doesn't
Yeah,
want there to be any kind of impropriety. Which is kind of interesting because the kind of characters he plays are usually pretty rough and tumble. But it's like he's using a lot of brains in that.
it's sad though that's where we're at.
Hey, all you have to
That
do is just be accused, right? And then
but
that can
but
ruin your
on the
whole
other
career.
hand, what bothers me is that when you're a football player or you're a baseball player, and it's always bothered me about Pete Rose, is that you could gamble on anything in the world. Why do you gamble on the sport that you're actually
Well,
involved in?
because I love it too much. Hey, Russell, we got to go to our last break. Okay,
Oh wow, that
2000.
fast. Okay.
It was very fast. 2,632 is also a famous number. Why is that? Stay with us. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Russell Jackman. Our third trivia question, the baseball numbers we're talking here. Why is the number 2,632 also a famous baseball number?
Is that
Go ahead. You're cutting in and out. Did I hear you say Cal Ripken's consecutive game streak?
yeah? Is that yes? Is that Cal Ripken's
That
streak?
is, yes. And it's funny because, last segment we were talking about how both Hank Aaron and Roger Maris were threatened with death threats when they were going to break Babe Ruth's record. I don't remember anybody doing, anything other than rooting for Cal Ripken to beat Lou Gehrig's streak. I mean,
Well, Cal
everybody
Ripken
cares
was
about
one of the nicest guys
that.
in
Yeah.
Cal Ripken Jr. Nobody had anything negative to say about him.
No,
He was just
exactly.
Mr. Gee Whiz, all American. How could you not root for him? I actually got
Yeah.
to see him one time at Memorial Stadium in Baltimore and hit a home run while I was watching, and sometimes you do have to stand back in when you're watching greatness
Yeah.
and admire it.
Well, hey,
When
listen,
Steph,
when I saw Willie Mays hit a home run when I was, 11, 12 years old, it's like that to me was the big highlight.
when Steph Curry went for 50 in Game 7,
Yeah.
for the first time ever. I mean, sometimes it's nice to just sit back and watch a record happen and
Yeah,
say, hey, I was there to see it.
exactly.
That's always a wonderful thing.
All
You
right,
know,
my friend, are you ready for our thoughts of the day before we get out of
never,
here? Oh,
never.
okay. I thought the dryer was shrinking my clothes. Turns out it was the refrigerator all along. That's good.
That's
Yeah,
not
I
bad.
like that one. And I know 25 letters of the alphabet. I don't know why.
Oh,
Ah, another good one. You like that? Hey,
yeah, those are really good
those are
dad
good. All
jokes.
right, we're happening now. Okay, tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We'll be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Adios.
So long.